Right, Tony Ferguson just had another horrible performance at UFC 296, and today we're going to look at his post-fight press release and talk about what the move from the UFC should be next for him, or what Tony Ferguson's next move should be. Now, look, all of this comes, of course, with a place of love for Tony Ferguson. I've followed this sport for a long time, and I have been a massive Tony fan, but we need to sit down and we need to talk honestly about where he is in his career. I know this sucks, but it is what it is. He lost to Paddy Pimblett. Now look, Paddy Pimblett doesn't look great. I know he is now a top 10 UFC fighter, but trust me when I say there is going to be a massive fraud check coming. Come at me in the comments, wig wearers. I know you love him, but he is going to get tested heavily in the UFC top 10. Look, I know his cardio looked bad, and I also know that he did have the flu in that fight or over the weekend, so I can understand why his cardio looked bad. But his striking, man, his striking is horrible, yeah? His chin's always up, he's always rushing in. There's a reason Paddy Pimblett gets caught in every single one of his fights, and when that chin does eventually fail him, and it's going to happen soon, we're all going to know about it. Right, I mean, St. Denis, Jarlin Turner, Dan Hooker, pick anyone in the UFC's top 10 at lightweight. And I mean, like, even Beneil Dariush has a chance of winning against Paddy. And like, Beneil Dariush is a free name to claim right now. So look, Paddy Pimblett is a really good, Cage Warriors top level fighter, right? He's lightweight. He's a great lightweight, but he's just outside of the top 15 in my opinion. He's somewhere between the top 15 and the top 20 of UFC lightweights. He's about that level of good. So here we are, okay? These are just the facts. Tony Ferguson's now on a losing streak of like seven in a row. I've literally lost count at this point, but it feels like it's 7 in a row. Losing to a fighter that does have a massive weight cut, which really drains him, who should be between ranked 15th and 20th and has the flu. And Tony got dominated. Like, Tony didn't win a single round in there. That is just where we are now, Tony fans. Like, I'm sorry that we're here, but that's the state of his career at the moment. There is no redeemable thing about Tony Ferguson's career today going into 2024. So Tony released a statement. I'll read it for you now. I love my fans. I love my supporters. You're all fire. I met lots of you tonight. Keep faith, MFers. One foot in front of the other. Remember what I said, crew. Champ. So what can we take out of that from Tony's perspective? I mean, honestly, not much. Really, not much. Personally, I don't think Tony's going to retire. I don't think he will. But that statement that Tony made could be followed up with anything. I mean, that statement could be, I'm moving on to bigger and better things. That statement, one foot in front of the other, still makes sense. But also remember, we're speaking Tony talk. We're speaking Tony ease, yeah? Like, Tony is the type of guy to leave his house, drive back in 10 minutes just to tell you he's heading out for the day, and then just practice ankle picks with the kids for an hour before he heads off again. Right, like, Tony Ferguson is the type of guy to hire David Goggins for advice and then give David advice in between rounds. Tony Ferguson is the type of guy to break his own arm just to condition his own bones. We've heard the jokes, mate. We know Tony Ferguson is insane. So reading what Tony is going to say is, no, what are you going to do? It's like reading smoke off a fire. The point is, we're reading the words of a high-level thinker here, so we really don't know what Tony's game plan is. Let's get serious for a second. If he doesn't want to retire, and I think we need to be mean here. I think we need to be harsh, but with love, okay? Like, with Tony, it always comes from a place of love, but it's like we need to take the scissors out of the child's hand because we love them. The kid wants to sit around and drink beer with daddy, but we can't give him daddy's beer. If I was Dana White, I'd be very rich, but if I was Dana White and Tony Ferguson didn't want to retire, I would say no problem. Now, I believe Tony's just re-signed to the UFC, and if I was Dana White, I'd encourage that. I'd ask, do you want to renegotiate? Do you want to re-sign again? Do you want to re-sign for even longer, even more money? Like a 15-fight contract with just a massive number connected to it. Now, remember, when you sign to the UFC, their contract is, I believe they have to offer you 3 fights per year. And if you say no to one of those 3, that's 1 offer down. So that is the contractual obligations from the UFC's end, as far as I understand it. Knowing that, I would offer him just terrible fights. Just awful fights. fights he wouldn't want to take. And I would also offer him fights that I don't think would happen. I mean, I would be mean if I was the UFC. I would hear that a fighter was injured behind the scenes from their camp, wouldn't be available for about 4 months, and then I'd offer it to Tony within the next 2 months. And Tony, being a G, he'd say yes to that, and then, oh no, oh, the fight dropped out, and oh, no one wants to step in on short notice, Tony. I know this fighter's saying they would, and this fighter's saying they would, but behind the scenes, Tony, they're really saying no, they just won't take the fight, mate. I would do everything I can to sign Tony and hold up his career if the UFC, if he doesn't want to retire. That's what I would do. If I was the UFC, I wouldn't drop him at all. Because if you drop him and he wants to keep fighting, he will go to bare knuckle boxing or PFL or something. And again, he just lost to, you know, a 15th to 20th ranked 30-year-old fighter with the flu and got dominated. It's not good. Tony Ferguson, 40 years old, 7 losses in a row down, goes and fights in another organization, they will try and milk his name the way the UFC has done for the last 2 years. And he will get very, very hurt. And here's the thing. Tony Ferguson has a long list of mental issues, which is only going to get exacerbated as he gets older. So if I was Dana White, not only would I be incredibly rich, but I would block Tony Ferguson's career until he said he's retiring from combat sports. And if I was the UFC, I'd just hold on to his contract for as long as possible until, unfortunately, it inevitably sunsets. But to me, that's the safest possible outcome for Tony Ferguson at this point. I believe that if Tony does want to keep fighting, then we as an MMA community, as the UFC, as an MMA organization, we need to treat him with harsh love, but like the harsh love of a parent, and close the opportunities around him for him to do danger to himself, which hurts me. Like, it's very contradictory of me to say that I'm the sort of person that believes that if you want to jump off a bridge, like, go ahead and do it. As long as you're not hurting anyone, like, go nuts, you know? But I do also think that you need to flex some authority when you have the power to, and if you have the ability to help someone and stop them from hurting themselves, then, you know, you should at least try and do that and do everything you can. Obviously, Tony Ferguson is a grown man. He's going to do what he wants to do. But if the MMA community has a chance here to help him, and it's a bit harsh to do it that way, then do it that way. Again, it's a very contradictory feeling for me, but I do think it's the best thing to do. Let me know what you would do with Tony Ferguson's career if you were Dana White down there in the comments. Yeah, I love hearing your comments and getting back to you guys. Leave a comment just like Joe Renner did, okay, when we were talking about Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland at UFC 296 in the audience. Joe said, stupid setup. Maybe morons will believe it wasn't a setup by Dana, but it was. Dana seats them there. Sean threw fake punches, so here we are, WWE shit. Look, I don't know if it was scripted, like Sean go throw fake punches at DDP, but Dana did sit them there. And, you know, if you're gonna put a lit flame next to petrol, you shouldn't be surprised when it blows up. I don't think it was also a coincidence that the UFC had like 5 cameras pointing at those seats when that blew up. You know, like right as DDP was antagonizing Sean, they knew to get all the cameras around there, and now they have great footage of it. So I don't know if it was exactly like scripted. You know, I'm sure it wasn't scripted, yeah? But I just don't think you can be surprised when Sean Strickland reacts to Dricus du Plessis. In fact, I'm sure that Dana White, the chronic gambler, was absolutely banking on it and just allowed the chaos to ensue. But we'll never know. They are partnered with the WWE now. Hopefully we're not going down a fully scripted path. That would be horrible. Quite frankly, I'd bounce. You know, that's what one championship's for. It's always there just in case the UFC fails. Let me know your thoughts on Tony Ferguson. How would you treat him if you were in control of his career? If you were the UFC, how would you treat him? Let me know down there in the comments. If you're enjoying this video, if you're still here at this point in the video, maybe you've been entertained in some way, maybe I've given you something to think about from a different perspective. So if you could go ahead, hit that subscribe button, give these videos a chance popping up on your feed for like a week. And if you're not enjoying them, it's fine. It's all good. You can always go ahead and unsubscribe in the future. That's fine with me. That's it for me today. Of course, I will see you all in the next video.